Hello guys, welcome to the next session of developing e-commerce application from scratch using Angular and Spring Boot. Till the last session we discussed on how we can fix some of the defects that were present in our code. Like previously we developed different functionalities, and those functionalities were having some small defects inside it. So till the last session we fixed those defects. Now in this session we are going to work on new feature that is called as a view product detail feature. So on our home page we are able to see these products, like whatever products we have. As of now we have only 6 products, that's why we are able to see only 6 products on home page. But whatever number of products we have, we are able to see on the home page. And the next thing that we have to do is we have to just make these view details button clickable, and whenever user will click on any specific view details button, then we want to show all the information which is related to this particular product. So what we have to do is we have to just first of all create one new component which will be a totally separate component, and on that component we have to show all the information. So let's see how we can do this one. So first of all, let me just take you to the VS Code, and the very first thing that we have to do is we have to create a component. So let me just stop the current execution of my running application, and let me just use the command that is npm run ng-gc, and let me just give the name as product view details, like this. So this command will generate the new product details component, and then the next thing that we have to do is we have to configure a path for the newly created component. So let me just take you to the app routing module ts file. Inside this file we have to just create one path. So let me just use comma, and let me just configure one path. So my path will be like product view details, and then we have to give a component as well, and then my component name will be a product view details, which is we just created, and then we have to give a resolver as well. So like if you are following my series, you must be knowing what is the resolver, because we have previously created a resolver whenever we were working on the update product detail operation. But if you don't have the idea like what is product or what is the resolver, so resolver is nothing but a service which will help us to load the data first, and then like once the data is completely loaded, then and only then the HTML will get rendered. So let me just tell you with the example. So for example, let's suppose whenever we were clicking on the view details button, then what will happen, request will go to the backend, and then it will fetch all the data from the backend which is specific to this product, and then that details once we received from the backend, then and only then we will be able to show it onto the UI, right? So this is the complete process that we have to follow. But to take the data from the backend we require some time, because database operation is kind of a time consuming operation. So we require some time to fetch the data from the backend, and like so what we want is we want our UI should wait till our data is completely loaded, and once the data is completely loaded, then and only then we want to show it onto the UI. So in this process the resolver will help us. So resolver will wait till the data is completely loaded, and once the data is loaded, then and only then it will show the HTML, or we can say that it will load the UI components. So in this way we can like avoid the unnecessary errors, because if our HTML gets loaded first, then we might have to face some issues. So like this is the main reason we have to use a resolver. So previously we have used a resolver, so you can just, if you just want, I will just show you the code as well. So what you have to do is we have to just configure a we have to create one new service, like whichever service you want, you can just give the name. In my case I have used a product resolve service, and then we have to implement this particular service with the resolve, and inside this we have to give the type of like resolver. So I want to resolve the product type of product type, that's why I have used a product over here. And then there is one method that we have to override. So we have to use this resolve method, like we have to override this resolve method, and you can just check out the code. So over here what I'm just doing is on line number 20 I'm just taking the ID of my product, and then if the ID is present, what I'm doing is I'm just going to the backend and I'm fetching the details of that particular ID, and once the details are fetched, we can say that our HTML will get loaded. So if ID is not present, then we are just returning like this empty product. So you can just look into this code, and you can just check out my previous video as well. Now let's come back, and over here let me just use one property. So we have to use resolve, and then we have to just give the resolve name. So we have to use a product resolve service. So over here if you see, we have used a product over here, and we have to give a product resolve service. Now this product is a name, like we cannot give any name over here. We have to use a, I mean, this particular name is very, very important. So make sure you are just giving the correct name over here. I mean, correct isn't, you can just give product or product details, whatever you want over here, but whatever name we are using here, we have to use the same name at the different places that I will just show you. Now let me just save this particular code, and what we have to do next thing is we have to just go to the home page, and then we have to go to the HTML file. Over here if you just go to the HTML file, you will see there is one button that is called as a view details button. Now what we want is, whenever we will click on this view details button, we want to take our user to our page that we just created. So let me just use a click action over here, and whenever we will click on this, we will just say it as a show product details. So this is the function that I'm going to create. Now show product details function will take one parameter, that is nothing but a ID of the product. So let me just use p dot product ID. Now you must be thinking why I'm using p dot product ID, because if you just see, like we are just using the ng for the product details, and like p is nothing but the current object that we were clicking on, and p dot product name, p dot product discounted price, we can just access all the properties. Similarly we have one more property, that is product ID. So I'm just accessing that product ID by p dot product ID. Now this function is not present, we have to create this function. So let me just copy the function name, and let me just go to the ts file of the home page, and then let me just paste this function name. So let me just copy it again, and then let me just correct this parameter, because we can't use p dot product ID like this. So let me just use a product ID only. And then what we have to do is, whenever user will click on this button, then we want to take or redirect our user to the newly created component. So what we have to do is, we have to first of all inject a router. So let me just use private router, which will be of type router, which comes from @angular/router. And then what we have to do is, we have to just use this dot router dot navigate, and then we have to use these brackets because it is a function. Inside this bracket we have to send some parameters. The very first parameter we have to send is nothing but our path. So my path is nothing but a let me just copy the path, which is a product view details, like this. And after the path we have to give our product ID as well, because we are using the resolver, and as I just showed you, in resolver we are using the product ID, so that with the help of that ID we will fetch the data from the backend. So I'm just going to use product ID colon product ID. So this product ID is nothing but this parameter name that we want to send to this particular path, and this product ID is nothing but the value that we are getting from the function parameter. Now if I just open the product resolve service, over here if you see, like we have the product ID. So this product ID and this particular product ID, both names should match. So just make sure you are using the same name at both of the ends. Now we are done with this particular thing. The next thing that we have to do is, first of all, let me just run my application again. Let's see what we are currently getting, whether we are able to redirect to the new page or not. So let's see what we are getting. So let me just come back to the Google Chrome and let me just wait till my application compiles successfully. Okay, so now let me just refresh the application, and now let me just click on the view details page. So now if you just see, like whenever I am clicking on the view details, it is taking me to the login page. So it is asking me, like, if you want to access this particular component, or we can say that if you want to access the product details, we must have to log in. So we don't want, like, to view the details user should be logged in, so we don't want to put that condition. What we want is user should be able to access the home page, and alongside user should also be able to access the view details page without login. So we have to make or implement functionality in that way. So what we have to do is we have to just go to the backend, and if you just see, like if I just click on the network tab and let me just click on the view details. So now if you just see, like our get product details API is giving us that unauthorized response. So if I just go to this particular API, which is get product details by ID, so let me just go to the IntelliJ, and over here let me just go to the controller. Let me just go to the product controller, and over here if you just see, like we have the API which is get product details by ID, and if you just see, we have applied a security on this API. Like we have applied that only admin will be able to access this particular API. So we want to remove this because we don't want any security on this particular API. And now let me just remove that annotation. And the next thing that we have to do is we have to just copy this particular API name or API path, and we have to paste it into a configuration, web security configuration, and we have to just paste it inside this particular list, because whatever URLs that we are we are giving over here, all these URLs don't require any security. So that is why we have to give the API, because we don't want any security on this particular API. So we have to tell the Spring that we don't want any security on this API. So that is the reason we have to mention it over here. Now let me just save this code and let me just restart the application. Let's see what happens. And now at this particular time, whether we are able to access that component or not. So my Spring application is started. Let me just close this network tab and let me just go to the home page and let me just refresh. And now let me just click on the view details. And now if you just see, we are able to access the view product details component, and we are getting this default message as well. Now on this component or on this particular HTML file, we have to use some styles, and we have to give some product information as well. So let's see step by step how we can implement this particular page. Now first of all, let me just go to the HTML file of my product detail component. So let me just close off all of this file, and let me just go to the HTML file of it. So product view details, and inside the HTML file. Inside the HTML file, first of all, let me just remove this default message. The very first thing that we have to do is we have to use a division or div tag. Now we have to apply one class, that is container class. So this container class is a bootstrap class. It is not my class, it is bootstrap class. So container will give some default margin and from left and right side, So this is how the container will work. And now let me just give some lorem ipsum text over here. So let me just type the lorem, and it will, like, VS Code will automatically populate all the information. So lorem ipsum is nothing but a dummy text. So just to check how my UI is looking, I'm just using the dummy text, but in a moment we are going to remove it. Now if you just see, we are getting some margin from left and right hand side, but we also want some margin from the top end. So we have to apply one more class, which is nothing but empty dash 5. So empty is nothing but a margin top, and again this is a bootstrap class. Now if you just see, we are getting these we are getting the margin from the top as well. Now what we want our screen to be divided or splitted into two different columns, so that in one column we will show the images, in second column we will show the product details or product information. So let's first of all quickly divide our screen into two different columns. So let me just remove this particular lorem ipsum, and again what we have to do, we have to use a one division, and this particular division should have a class that is called as a row. So again, row is nothing but a bootstrap class. Again inside this row, what we have to do, we have to use division, and we have to apply one more class that is call dash 6, and similarly we have to just copy this division and we have to paste it over here. So now if you are aware about the bootstrap, so bootstrap basically uses the grid system. So our screen is completely divided into 12 imaginary columns by the bootstrap. So this particular screen, like if I just go to the Google, so this particular screen will be divided into 12 different imaginary components. So what we are doing is, and 12 is a fixed digit, so bootstrap will always divide your screen into 12 columns. So what we are saying is, we want one row, and that row should contain two different columns, and each division or each section should acquire 6 columns among 12. So the first division will acquire 6 columns and second division will acquire the 6 columns. So in that way it will get splitted. So if you just want to check, you can just again use a lorem ipsum, which is a dummy text, and we can just save it. And let me just go to the Chrome, and now if you just see, our screen is divided into two imaginary columns. In the right hand side section, I am just going to focus on how we can show the information. So first of all, let's see how we can show the information to the user. Like information as in, we have to show product name, product description, and then we have to show the product price as well. So let me just come back to the VS Code again, and let me just remove the lorem ipsum from the second column. So I'm now currently working on the right hand side column. So over here again, what we have to do is, we have to use a division. Inside the division, what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to create one class. So I'm just going to create one class that is product underscore info, not underscore, product dash information, and then we have to just create this class. We haven't created it right now, but we have to create. Let me just create it in a moment. But then what we have to do is, we have to just give a division as well, and inside this particular division, first of all, what we will show the product heading, or we can say that product title. We are just going to show the product title in this division. Now how to show the product details, right? Because we want to fetch the product details first, and then only then we will be able to show them. So let me just go to the TS file of it, and over here what we have to do is, we have to get those product details, because we haven't wrote any we have used a resolver, but from resolver also we have to fetch those details into this TS file of this component. So what we have to do is, like previously we have done, if you just see, like if we just go to the add new product, and if I just go to the TS file of it, then inside the ng on init, if you just see, like we have done this thing previously. So let me just copy the same line, and then let me just come back to my product view details, and then let me just paste it inside the ng on init. And then what we have to do is we have to, like, if you just see, we are getting the error on the product because in our scope we don't have any variable or object with the name product. So what we have to do, we have to just use product, which will be of type product, like this. And then we have to inject the activated root. So let me just use a private activated root. Let me just copy the name, which is of type activated root, and this activated root again comes from @angular/router. And now let me just save these changes. Now inside the product, once our ng on init loaded, inside this product variable or object, we are able to get all the product details. So let me just use a console.log, and let me just use this dot product, like this. And now let me just come to the Google Chrome, and let me just open my console, and let me just refresh this particular component. And now we are able to get all the information like product ID, product name, and we are able to get the product images as well. So first of all, inside the heading we have to use a product name. So let me just copy this product name, which is my key, and then let me just come to the HTML, and over here we have to use the interpolation. And then what we have to do is we have to just use product dot product name, like this. And then let me just similarly copy this particular division, and we have to use a description as well. So let me just use a product description, like this. And now let me just save this code. Let's see what we are getting on the UI. So now if you just see on the UI, we are getting this painting combo 1, and then we are getting some lorem ipsum as well, because inside the description I have inserted some dummy text. So that is why we are getting that dummy text on the UI. Similarly, we have to just show our product discounted price and product actual price as well. But let's wait for a moment, and first of all let's apply some styles to this title and description. So for this title, I'm just going to use h2 tag, like this. And then now it is looking like this. And then for the description, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to write some text that is called as a description, and then I'm just going to use a br tag. Let's see how it looks. So it is looking like this. So we are going to increase the font as well, but as of now let's keep it as it is. And then what we want is we want some like space between the painting combo 1. I mean, we have some space, but again we want some more space so that it should look a bit consistent. So what we want is we just want to apply one class that is empty3. Let me just copy the same class and apply to the second division, like this. And let's see, yes, now it is looking quite good. Now what we have to do is we have to increase a font size as well. So previously we have applied this particular class. Now let's copy the name of the class, and let's create that class into CSS file. And let me just use text, or we can say that font size. And font size, let's first of all use a medium. Let's see how it looks. So I think medium will work for us, and medium is looking quite good as well. So let's keep it medium. If you want, you can just change. And now we have to show our prices as well. So we have to show our discounted price and our actual price as well. So first of all, let me just copy the key for this product discounted price, and then let me just create one more division And then first of all, let me just apply some bold tag, which is a B tag, and then let me just use rupees. So RS is nothing but a rupees. If you want, you can just use a dollar, or if you want, you can use a matte icon as well, but as of now I'm just using the rupees. And we have to use a product dot product discounted price, and again we have to use a interpolation. So let me just copy the text and let me just use a interpolation. Let's see how it looks. And yes, it is looking perfectly fine. Again, we want some margin, so let me just apply some class for this division, which is empty 3. And yes, now it is looking perfectly fine. And now we have shown the discounted price, but we want to show a actual price as well. So let me just copy the actual price key and inside the same B, or not inside the same B, let me just create one more bold tag, and let me just use product dot product actual price. And then we have to apply one style as well, text decoration, and we have to use the text decoration as line through like this. And now let me just save this. If I just go to the Google Chrome, now if you just see, like we are getting the information, but if you just see, like we don't have any space between this 9,000 and 10,000, so we have to give the space. So how we can give this? We have to just use and npsp, which is nothing but a special characters for a space. And now let me just save this code. And now if you just see, we are getting some space. If you just want, we can just give one more as well. So let me just copy this and let me paste it, and let's see. And now it is looking perfectly fine. The next thing that we have to do is we have to give one button, which will be a buy now button. So let me just quickly give that button. So let me again create one more division, and inside the division, let me just use a matte raised button like this. So this is matte raised button is nothing but a property that is coming from Angular material. So you can just visit the Angular material site and you can just check out different buttons as well. But as of now, I know the name of this matte raised button, so that is why I'm writing it directly over here. And let me just give the text as buy now. Let's see how it looks. So we are getting this particular button, and then what we have to do is we have to again apply some margin from the top. So let me just use empty dash 5, and yes, we are getting some margin. Then we want to change the color of this particular buy now button, because as of now it is white, but I just want to make it as a red, so that red can attract more people. So let me just use the color is equals to, and let me just use it as a warn. So warn is nothing but a color which comes with the Angular material. So warn is nothing but a red color. And yes, we are getting this red button. And the next thing that we want this button at the center, and we just want to increase the width of this particular button. So let me just apply some style, and let me just make width, and we can use 100 pixel. Let's see. So 100 pixel is bit less. Let me just use 200 pixel. Yes, so 200 pixel is looking perfectly fine. And we can just apply one more class, that is text dash center. And yes, it is now the button is at the center. So text dash center is again a bootstrap class. Now we are done with this right hand side section. The next thing that we have to focus on is the left hand side section. So on the left hand side, we have to show all the images. So let's first of all see how we can show all the images. So again, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use a matte grid list. So let's see how we can first of all show all the images to the matte grid list. Now we can just come back to this first column, and over here inside this we have to use a matte grid list. So again, using the matte grid list is very easy. If you just want, you can just check out the Angular material official website, and you can just try to understand more about the matte grid list. But again, matte grid list is nothing but kind of or let me just quickly show you as well, because it is not the topic that I can explain. Angular material. So if I just go to the Angular material official site, then you will see that components. So inside the components, you can just check out all the different components that they have provided. So they have the buttons, then grid lists, then tables, and almost every single thing that any web can contain. So if I just go to the grid list, and if I just show you the example, yes, so this is how the grid list will look like. So you can just you can just show all of the images in this kind of structured manner. So now what I'm just going to do is, and you can just check out the Vue code as well, you can just check out the code over here as well, but I don't require the code, I can just type it over here. So very first thing that we have to do is we have to use one tag that is called as a matte dash grid dash list, like this. And inside the matte grid list, we have to use a matte grid tile, like this. So matte grid tile, on this matte grid tile we have to use a ng-for, because we want to show the tile for every single image that we have. So we have to use ng-for is equals to, and we have to just use let file of product images. Now again, if you just see, like a product object that we have used over here, it contains one array that is called as a product images. So that is the reason I'm just using product images over here. And then the next thing that we want is, we just want img tag, and inside the src we just have to use a file dot url. So let me just save this particular line, and let's see what happens on the UI. So on this particular UI, I'm not able to see anything. Let's see what we have done wrong. So over here, if you just see, like src is equals to file.url. So file.url is a property that we are binding to the src. So we have to use a bindings over here which are provided by the Angular. So we have to use this square bracket for the src. And now let me just save these, and let's see. Okay, so still we are not able to get anything. So let me just do one thing. We can just try to inspect, and we can just go to the console, and let's see what happens. So over here, if you just see, like we are getting the error. It is saying that matte grid list must pass in a number of columns. For example, okay, so matte grid list basically contains one property that is called as a columns. That columns we have to give. So let me just apply cols is equals to, and let me just use it as a 4 columns. And now, or 4, we can just use a 3 as well. So let me just use 3, and let me just save this code. And now if I just show you, we are able to get all the images. As of now, images are not looking quite good, but we are going to make it like we are going to apply some styles, and we are going to fix it. Now we are able to see all the images. The next thing that we have to do is we have to apply some styles, and we have to make it more beautiful. The next thing that we have to do is we have to just apply one more property that is called as a gutter size. So gutter size, I'm just going to apply it as a 10, and let's see what happens. Okay, so gutter size is nothing but, if you just see, like there is a gap between all the images or all the grids. So this is what we call it as a gutter size. And then the next thing that we have to do is we have to apply a row height as well. So row height is by default 1:1. So I'm just going to keep it as 1:1 only, like this. and now let me just save it. So row height is nothing but a like a ratio of the width of the grid and height of the grid. So this is the ratio, right? If you just make it as a 2:1, let's see what happens. So if you just see, like now, like there is a like ratio. So now if the width is 2, then height will be half of it, which is a 1. So I hope you are understanding these calculations. If not, you can just skip it as of now, and you can just focus on the functionality. Now the next thing that we have to do is we have to like apply some more styles, and we have to apply some like padding, and we have to apply some border as well, right? So let me just first of all show you how we can apply some borders, and then the next thing that we have to do is we have to apply some width and height to the images as well. So first of all, let me just come to this matte grid tile, and let me just apply the style as border 1 pixel solid, and I'm just going to use a light gray color like this. And now let's see what happens. So as of now we are able to see the border, but it's not visible that much because we don't have any padding between the border and images. So let me just apply some style to the image. Let me just apply height, or instead of using the style we can directly apply the height is equals to 100 pixel. I'm just using 100 pixel as some starting point. We can just change if you just want, like this. And now we are able to see images in this particular way. So what we can just do is we can just keep every single thing as it is right now, because right now at least we are getting the expected output, or we can say that proper output. So we can just play with these images height and width as well. So let me just do one thing. Let me just try to remove the width. Let's see what happens. Yes, so I think if you just remove the width, then it will look quite good. And I think we can just remove the width as well, because as per the height, as per the aspect ratio, it will automatically calculate the width of the image as well. The next thing that we have to do is we have to create one more we can say that one more place where, let's suppose if I'm clicking on this first image, then I should be able to view this particular selected image in a big size, right? If I just click on the second image, then I should be able to see this particular second image in a big size. So now let's focus on how we can implement that functionality. So what we have to do is, on top of this matte grid list, what we are going to do is we are going to use one division, and then to this division we are going to apply one class that is called as a card. So card is nothing but again a bootstrap class. And now let me just save this. And the next thing that we have to do is we have to apply some style as well, because for the card we have to give some height and width as well. So first of all, let me just create one class. I'm just going to give the name to the class that is called as a image container. And now let me just copy the name of the class, and we have to create this as well. So let me just come back to the CSS, and let me just use height, let's see 500 pixel. And now let me just save this code. Let's come back to the Google Chrome, and now if you just see, we are getting some card, and we are getting this height of card is 500 pixel. The next thing that we have to do is we have to show our first image inside this card. So by default, whenever a user will jump to this page, we will show our first image to this particular card. So what we are going to do is we are going to apply the image tag again. So let me just use img, and src will be nothing but a product dot product images, and I'm just going to use its 0th index because product images is an array. You can just check out to the console.log like we have used, so you can just check out into that. So product images is array, so I'm just going to use 0th index, and then I'm just going to use dot URL. So URL is nothing but a property, and again to this src we have to use the binding, so we have to use these square brackets over here. Now let me just save this code. Let's see what happens. And now if you just see, we are getting these image, like whatever 0th index image we have, by default we are getting that image on this card. The next thing that we have to do is we have to just apply some padding as well. So let me just apply some padding. So let me just use p-3. So p-3 is again nothing but a bootstrap class, and yes, we are getting some padding as well. But what we want is we want this image to be centered vertically, because as of now it is not centered vertically. So we want to take this image as a centered vertically. So what we have to do is, again for this we have to apply some classes. So let me just come back to the image, and over here let me just apply one class. Let's suppose product zoom image. You can just give any class name, and we have to just create this particular class in our CSS. Let me just use dot product zoom image, and for this image container we have to apply one more class, that is position is equals to relative. And for this product zoom images we have to give some some styles again. So I'm just going to use max width as a 90%, max height as a 90%, and then I'm just going to use the position as absolute. And then again there are 4 more properties, the 4 more styles that we want. We want top should be 0, then bottom should be 0, left should also be 0, and right should also be 0. And if you just want, you can just give all of these properties in a all of these styles in a single line, but I have just used separate lines. And I'm just going to use margin as a auto. Now let me just save this code. Let's see what happens. And now if you just see, we are getting this particular image at the center. Now the next thing that we have to do is we have to implement only the last functionality. Is, let's suppose whenever if you are clicking on the second image or third image, then we want to change our top image. So we want to do that as well, right? So first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to apply some margin in between this card and inside this grid. So let me just go to the HTML, and let me just do one thing. Let me just create one more division, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put my mat grid list inside that division, and I'm just going to apply one class, that is empty-2. And now let me save it, and yes, it is looking quite good. And then the next thing that we have to do is we have to just make it dynamic. So if I am just clicking on the second image or third image, then I should be able to change the card image as well. So again, this is pretty simple. What I'm going to do is inside my TS file, I'm going to use one selected product index. I'm just going to use one index, and initial value of that index is a 0. And I'm just going to bind this variable inside my HTML. So instead of this 0, I'm just going to use this variable like this. And if you just see, like, it is working as expected. So it is initially showing the 0th image onto the card. Now whenever we will click on any of the below images inside the grid, then we want to change the index number, right? So let me just do one thing. Let me just use a click event on this mat grid tile, and I'm just going to create one function like change index, and that index will take one parameter, which is the index number. So again, we can use Angular's inbuilt ng for functionality, and we can just give let I is equals to index. So it will automatically keep track of on which index we are clicking, and whichever index we are clicking, that index will get saved inside this I variable, and that I variable we want to pass it to the change index function. And this change index function we haven't created, so we have to create it. Let me just copy the name. Let me just come back to the TS file and let me just create this particular function. So over here we can just give the name as index, and we can just use this dot selected product index is equals to index like this. And let me just save this code. Let's see what happens. Now let me just do one thing. Let me just click on these images. Yes, now we are able to change the images by clicking on the grid tile. If you just see, it is looking perfectly fine and it is working as expected. The only thing that we have to do is we have to change the cursor. So whenever I'm just going on the grid, I just want to change a cursor. So let me just do one thing. Let me just apply some style to this matte grid tile. So with the border, let me just apply one more style, which is cursor is equals to pointer like this. And now let me just save this code. Let's see what happens. Now if you are just going on the images, you will be able to see the difference between these cursor. Like as of now we have the normal arrow. If I'm just going on to this image, we are getting this hand, right? So it is working as expected and it is working perfectly fine. So similar property or like on the button we get it by default, but on the grid tile we have to just apply. So I hope like you got an idea how we can implement this particular page. If you just want, you can just give some more information as well. In future we are going to show a lot of information on these images, on not on this image, on this page. So we are going to show add cart button as well. Then inside the below section we are going to show all the recommended products as well. So whichever things we want, we can just show it onto the images, but those things should relevant to the user. It should not be like we cannot show anything, but we can show something which will be helpful to the user. So I hope you got an idea like how we can implement the functionality. So let me just check it with some other product as well. Let me just click on this painting combo 2 view details, and we are able to see these horse images. If I'm just clicking on the second image, yes, it is working perfectly fine. We are getting the title and we are getting the price as well. So for most of the products I have I have inserted the exact same information like dummy text, but you can just check out with the different information and it will definitely work. So I hope you got an idea around this, like how we can implement this view product details functionality. If you still have any questions, let me know into a comment section and I will try my best to help you out in that case. And I hope you enjoyed this session, and I'll see you in the next session.